Okay, so let's quickly go over what's included in the box with the X7s. We have the packaging right there, really nice packaging. We've got the amplifier, of course, a power adapter, a manual, and a 3.5 to 6.3 adapter. Okay, so now let's go over the inputs, outputs, buttons, and knobs. In the front here, you can see you've got the main volume knob. It feels very, very nice, very smooth. You've got a 6.3 headphone output here. You've got a 4-pin XLR balanced output. Now, this is it's a balanced output, but it's not a fully balanced amplifier because you can see on the back here that it doesn't have any balanced inputs. But on the back, you do have a left and a right audio in, standard RCA inputs. You also have an audio output, left and right RCA in case you want to use this as a preamp. You've got the on-off power toggle here, and you've got your power connection here. Now, as far as the design and the build, I like the design a lot. And we talked about this little cut on the side here when I was reviewing the X8 Magic DAC. I like that. That looks really, really cool. It's very kind of a minimalistic approach to the design. I like the black. This is also available in silver. This looks good when it's stacked with some of the other products that you can get. The design aesthetic kind of carries throughout their product line. And I've got this stacked on top of my X8 Magic DAC, and it just looks really, really nice. Build quality is really good. Volume knob feels smooth. Overall, the design and build of the X7s is excellent. Now, as far as specifications, again, this is the 2021 version and is the third generation of the X7s. It comes in at $289 and is a Class A amplifier. The 6.3 output has 250 milliwatts of power output at 300 ohms and 1000 milliwatts or 1 watt at 32 ohms and has a signal to noise ratio of 117 dBs. The XLR output has 1000 milliwatts or 1 watt at 300 ohms of power output and 1700 milliwatts or 1.7 watts at 32 ohms, and also has a signal to noise ratio of 117 dBs. It has 3 gain stages, high, medium, and low, and the gain adjustment is on the bottom of the unit. We'll go over that a little bit. It has inputs and outputs, so it can not only be used as an amplifier, but also as a preamp. Okay, so let's talk about the sound of the X7s 2021. Now, again, this is the third generation of this amplifier. So I did do a little research. I was trying to do my due diligence. I wanted to be thorough, and I was trying to determine what the differences were between this newer version and some of the older versions. I did some reading on their website, watched some older reviews, read some older reviews, and the only thing I was really able to determine definitively is that the only difference is that they use a different power supply. The older one used a proprietary power supply, whereas this one uses basically just a standard power supply. Otherwise, as far as I know, everything else internally is the same. A lot of the specifications look the same, but again, not important. I just kind of, again, wanted to do my due diligence and try to be as thorough as possible. But I digress. I think the big question on all of our minds, and the reason I'm here, is to discuss the sound of the 2021 version. So how does the 2021 version sound? Well, it sounds really good. And if you're concerned now, depending on whether you have all IEMs or if you have headphones, maybe you're curious how versatile this unit is. Will it work with just IEMs? Because, you know, typically desktop amplifiers have a little more power, and obviously if you look at the outputs here, you've got a 6.3 output, XLR output, which those are full-size headphone outputs. But of course it does come with an adapter it's a 3.5 to 6.3 adapter. So as long as all of your IEMs have a 3.5, or like for me, I've got a 3.5 option cable for all of my IEMs. But this unit is very versatile. As a matter of fact, if you look at the bottom here, they have the gain switches here on the bottom, and whenever I'm listening to IEMs, I just put it in low gain. And I have, of course, I've got the X8 Magic DAC that I use in combination with the X8s. And I usually, even with my Campfire Andromedas, in low gain, I'll set my DAC to about halfway, and then that gives me not a ton of volume control, but I can usually have about, well, from about 7 o'clock to 12 o'clock of volume adjustment. And that's perfectly fine for me. Now, if you do have, the only thing is if you do have a sensitive IEM, and again, the Andromeda 2020 is a very sensitive IEM, you will hear a little bit of background noise. Not much, but a little bit. And I didn't actually notice it with any other IEM. Typically, the Campfire IEMs are very sensitive. So, but if you don't have a super sensitive IEM, most likely you're not going to hear background noise. I didn't hear any background noise with any other of my other IEMs, and definitely not with my headphones. So this is a versatile amplifier. It'll work fine whether you have IEMs or headphones. Now, most of my time with the X7s was actually listening with my full-size headphones. And as you can see, I've got the LCDX 2021 version there, and I've got the Sivga SV023s. Of course, I did extensively test it with IEMs, but again, that was mainly for testing purposes. But most of my time was actually spent with the headphones. And again, we talked about the power output of the 6.3 and the XLR. The 6.3 at 32 ohms will put out 1 watt of power. The XLR at 32 ohms will put out 1.7 watts at 300 ohms. The 6.3 will put out 250 milliwatts, and the XLR 1 watt. And now my LCDXs are a 20 ohm headphone, but they do have a sensitivity of 103 dBs. So those are very, very easy to drive. Now, the Sivga SV023s are a 300 ohm headphone, and even with that 300 ohms, with the 6.3 putting out 250 milliwatts, that was actually a pretty good amount of power, but it did sound better out of the XLR output. And again, this is not a fully balanced amplifier. This is a balanced output, but you don't have balanced inputs. So I'm not sure if they've got something going on internally or what, but for some reason, it actually did sound a little bit better out of the XLR balanced output. And now that wasn't something I just noticed with the SV023s. I noticed it with my LCDXs also. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by it sounded a little bit better out of the XLR? Well, let's talk about the overall sound of the amp first. We'll talk about how it sounded to me out of the 6.3, and then we'll go into the XLR here in a minute. Now, if you read the website claims, and I'll even read a quote for you. It says that the overall sound of the X7s is warm and rich, and that the tuning is based on real instrument sounds and musical content referencing, resulting in a signature that is natural and full of musicality. And now I would agree with that for the most part. This does have a natural sound for sure. And I would say that it is slightly warm, but for the most part, to my ear, and again, this is just my take on this, it comes across a little bit more linear to me. I wouldn't necessarily describe it as warm. I would describe it more as linear with just a hint of warmth. But again, it does sound natural. I don't even know if I would necessarily use the term rich. To me, that's not really that important. I do like a natural sounding amplifier, and that's the main thing for me. Is does it sound natural? I want something to sound real. And this definitely has a natural sound to me. I do wish it had a little more warmth to it, but that's perfectly fine. But as far as clarity and detail retrieval, this has excellent clarity, great detail retrieval. It's not the best detail retrieval I've heard, but it's still very, very good. Again, at this price point, I would say it's excellent. So that was my experience out of the 6.3. But when I plugged into the XLR, I noticed that the music just had a little more life to it. There was just a little more dynamics, especially in the mid-range, and the overall sound presentation was just a little more engaging. It wasn't a huge difference, but it was definitely a noticeable difference. And again, I don't know whether to attribute that to just maybe the greater power output the XLR has, or if it's something that's going on internally. I know it's not because it's a fully balanced amplifier, again, because there's no balanced inputs on the back. So, but there's something going on that's causing the XLR to sound a little bit different. And again, I noticed that on my IEMs too, not just on my headphones. And now going back to the website's description of the sound presentation of the X7s, it is definitely closer to that description out of the XLR than it is the 6.3. It does seem like, while I still wouldn't necessarily categorize it as warm or rich, it's definitely richer and maybe a little warmer. It seemed like there was even a little more note weight out of the XLR. So I would say that most of my time, I did find myself getting a little more enjoyment listening to the XLR output over the 6.3. So most of my time later on, as I got further into kind of diving into this, I did find myself spending more time using the XLR output than I did the 6.3. So my time with this unit has been really, really enjoyable. I have to say that for the $289 price, this is a great sounding amplifier. And again, paired with the X8 Magic DAC, that is just a great combination. I really enjoyed spending my time with both of these units. I would say that, again, just to bottom line everything, I would say that Aune is putting out some really, really excellent quality products, again, for that price point. And I would easily make this a top rec for anybody who's looking into the desktop, kind of getting into desktop amplifiers. This is a great, great option. So I would say Aune knocked it out of the park. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. Please subscribe, please like the video. Hope you guys have an awesome day.